welcome. Thanks to everyone for coming along this evening. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces, and very warm welcome to anyone who's new to a Gerlach Museum event. My name is Karen Buchanan and I'm curator at Gerlach Museum. And I should point out that part of tonight's event is supported by funding from Museums Galleries Scotland and the Art Fund. So I'd like to introduce to you Jim Buchanan, who many of you probably already know. Jim lives locally, and over the years he's been involved with the museum and in various other local archaeology projects. So he's helped to survey numerous sites, including Londubh Burial Ground in Poolewe. Most of his inputs has been recording images with a camera and a drone, as well as designing plans and maps. And he shares that information on websites and, when we're very lucky, in person, like this evening. So I'm going to hand over just now to Jim. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, everyone. I would ask that Pauline Butler, I've asked her to join in at any point because I tend to kind of wander off the subject and miss a few things. So I've asked Pauline to keep me correct in certain things and kind of pause and go back maybe. So just to let you know. First of all, for those of you who haven't been in the area, this is a map of the locality, Poolewe, and this is Londubh here, Srondubh and Inverewe. Sometimes the whole area can be called Inverewe because the old church that's actually in Londubh is sometimes called Inverewe Old Church. Now, there's a whole team of people involved in the survey. I think I've probably maybe missed out some people here. I just want to point out Cathy Dagg, an archaeologist from Scorig. She did an extensive survey, a 28-page report, which contains lots of information, and that's available for anyone who wants it. And Pauline as well, she collated all the survey results onto a database and did a few other things, like, for example, produce a booklet on it. The weather wasn't always as nice as this, by the way. Now, these three things together, the burial ground, the chapel, and the stone, they were recognised as being very special. In fact, in 1997, they were accorded the status of Scheduled Ancient Monument. So that's 23 years ago. Here's a drone picture looking down on the burial ground. And you can see, it's fairly circular. The trees obviously obliterate a lot of the view. The trees are actually within the wall, and they're actually causing problems because the roots are actually growing into the wall and destroying it. And also, if there's any gales, there's movement. I've taken a detailed map and I've taken the contours and kind of tried to show it as a diagram. And it tends to show that the center of the burial ground is much lower than the rest. This area here is also quite low. And there's a couple of high points here, but this doesn't really agree with what I found. I was there last weekend, and I've drawn this diagram to sort of show what I found. And here's the burial ground, the wall. I've taken a section through here, and this is a section shown here. These are the walls. This is the remains of the old church. And what I found really is that there's a gradual slope. This area here tends to be waterlogged. And I think I'll show you this area here, something's waterlogged. Although channels were put in and drainage was improved, I think 2006. It's 70 meters in diameter, and it was enclosed after it was in use. And I think really what you're seeing here, I'll just try and show it with a pen. I think this area here was the original burial ground. And I think later the wall was built. The wall itself is quite crude construction. It's round boulders or pebbles, and in some places it's been patched up very badly. You can see also here that there's a kind of mound where the church is situated. The church is Episcopalian. This is it here. And it's built on the site of a much older chapel. It's possibly founded on the site of a much earlier Christian monastic settlement. The present ruin is probably built in 1672, and we know that from sources. And it's partly pulled down in 1689. I think that this is the original part of the church. These bits have been added on, and there's been burials put within the structure. We produced this diagram of the burial ground, and every single grave marker is on this diagram. And we've actually split it into 8 different areas for convenience. This part here, this is the Sawyer family layer. Mary Sawyer, who was the daughter of Osgood Mackenzie. If you look closer at the detail here, the colours indicate various things. The blue colour, the light blue, is a recumbent, vertical. Sorry, I beg your pardon, horizontal, and the dark blue is vertical, upright. If it's a vertical upright and it's got a black border, then it's got an inscription. If it's this one here, for example, that has no inscription. Recumbent, no inscription. Recumbent with inscription. These ones here are now hidden with a thin layer of soil and grass. And these green ones up here, these are discarded. And these are tree trunks. Again, another view from above, and it kind of shows the different alignments. And it's something I don't really understand the kind of why graves are aligned in certain ways. Maybe someone can tell me at the end. This area here, I'll just get the pen out again. This area here, which is quite an old part of the burial ground. The alignment is pretty well northwest to southeast, but the more modern ones over here are a slightly different alignment. And this group here, for example, is yet again another alignment. Again, another view from above. We've got the font stone, which I'll talk about that later. We've got the Pictish symbol stone, and we've got the Sawyer layer here. In the background, in view garden and in view house. This is a north wall of the church or the chapel, and it's got a whole host of discarded slabs and grave markers. From directly above, you can see that just below the surface, there's loads of other horizontal grave markers. Probably about another 20 just in that area alone. So it'd be quite interesting to find out about these ones, but again, there's not much you can do in a burial ground. Again, this is the Pictish stone. Again, this is the north wall of the church, and it's got a whole lot of unused or discarded stones. These ones here are very thin, very flat. Some of the other ones, like this one here, for example, is very thick, and it looks as if it's always been recumbent, horizontal. You can see this problem with ivy. It's not normal ivy. It's called Atlantic ivy. It has completely covered the walls, and it's a problem. I mean, it has to really be carefully removed. I mean, I think there has been attempts made to remove it in the past, but it's not just a process of pulling it off. It's got to be very carefully removed. I think these are plot markers. Again, someone can let me know later on. And here is the font stone. It's also known as a cut stone or a wart stone. And I think because it had healing properties, some people would come and, for example, put their finger in there if they had a wart, and it was meant to remove that. I suppose there's quite a few other healing properties as well. And it's more than likely it's the discarded baptismal stone from the original pre-Reformation chapel. It seems that, I don't know if it's true or not, but even in dry periods, it never ever dries up. Who knows? Now, this is quite a bold statement I've made here, and the presence of Pictish symbol stone indicates Pictish settlement in the area. I just want to pause and kind of hold on to that, because the fact that we've got a stone here and a stone in Gairloch indicates that there must be some activity from Picts. It's quite a crude stone, really. It's a class 1, if you want to use that classification, and it's broken. This top bit here is severed, and there's probably a bit on top. We don't know what's on the back of it. I mean, perhaps that there are other inscriptions in the back. I don't know. The main distribution of Picts is shown in this dark grey portion here, and the lighter grey indicates where they have settled as well. For example, Orkney and Shetland. Somewhere down here in the south, over here in the west, and then this is the area here where there's quite a few symbol stones, which again indicates the presence of Picts. This is a more detailed map showing symbol stones, or sorry, not symbol stones, but various Pictish stones. This is the Londubh Burial Ground. This is the Gairloch one. There's one in Rassie, and there's 3 on Skye, and 1 on the Western Isles. So I'll just go back to, so that's this area here is what we're talking about. Here's a photograph of the Pictish symbol stone, and you can see that it's got a lot of these kind of striations, natural striations, and there's sort of moss starting to grow there. A closer view, it's Torridonian sandstone. Striations are full of moss, and there's also lichen starting to grow. And it's the same problem with all the older grave markers. You've got moss and lichen starting to obliterate the wording on the front. I just happened to be wandering around the burial ground one summer's evening at 9 o'clock, and you can see there that the way the light is hitting it, it actually shows the symbol very clearly. And again, this is a fracture line. What does it look like? Well, this is an interpretation of the symbol. It's a crescent virod, and this is the most common symbol that you can find in the Pictish situation. I mean, some people say this is a broken arrow, or it could be a plant stem. Here's the bud and leaves. And this is the plant opened out. You can see possibly a fish. This is a fish eye, and the fish is looking down. And there's all sorts of wonderful incisions here. So you can read into it a lot of things. It's, again, although I've said that the crescent viroid is very common, this one in Poolewe has got unusual kind of dots in it. So it was probably standing upright, and it was probably in the ground, maybe to about that level. It's got a missing top. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that it was an eagle symbol above it, but I've just picked that out as an example because we've got one in Poolewe. Cummins has recently managed to interpret a lot of these symbols. 15 out of 50 he's managed to give a name to. And he's used things like Ogham and Latin inscriptions. So using his information, the symbol at the top is denodnat, or I think I've pronounced that correctly, and there's brood. So the message on the stone is it was erected in memory of Denodnat, son of Brood, or Denodnat Macbrood. We can do the same with the salmon. For example, we'll pop the salmon at the top. Again, it probably wasn't a salmon. And it's the same story again. This is the father, Brood, and this is the person who has died, the son. Here's a small portion of the Pictish, one of the Pictish king lists. In fact, it's two together. And the only two examples I can find of someone who's died, and it's the son of Brood, is here and here. This person, Yongus or Angus, and this is AD 803, and this one here is AD 822 to 58. These dates are kind of a bit late. I mean, I think I would expect a more Christian symbolism on the stone if it was as late as that. So I'm not convinced about that. And I've shown here in arrows that Brood has appeared in various other times as well. This name here is just another name for Brood. If it was, just come back in, if it is Yongus or Angus, then this is the symbol you would expect for him. So possibly this could have been the stone before it was broken. I'm sticking my neck out here. I mean, and you can shoot me down if you want. I mean, the good thing about not being an archaeologist is I don't have a reputation to maintain, so I can say what I want. It doesn't matter. Again, just going back to the Gairloch stone. And these are the two examples I used for that. So this stone was erected in memory of Denodnat, son of Nechtan. And it's funny that both of these stones have had a fracture on them, and you wonder, was this deliberate? Or did they just fall over? I mean, this stone was carted around Gairloch. I mean, it appeared in various locations, Gairloch, and you just wonder if the stone in Poolewe Burial Ground and Londubh Burial Ground has been moved. I don't think it's been moved very far, but it may not have been in the burial ground initially. Okay, let's go back to the let's go back to the real thing. This is the extension at the northeast end of the burial ground, and it's the Sawyer family lair. Remember I said Mary Sawyer was initially a Mackenzie because she was the daughter of Osgood Mackenzie, who established the garden. She then married Robert Hanbury, and she then married Ronald Sawyer. And Robert and her had a child. I think the child died after maybe 3 or 4 months. I think this is one of these plot markers. I think they're plot markers anyway. And beside it, you've got a millstone as I assume it's as a grave marker, and you've got, it looks like a horseshoe here. So it'd be interesting to find out what exactly is going on here. This is a photograph of the funeral of Albert Haskell, and as you can see, it's full military honours. So Albert, he was a blacksmith's mate on this battleship Zealandia, and it was in Loch Ewe for exercises around about that time. This is all that's left of Albert's cross, but I think it has now been improved. It's now, I think it's been replaced by another wooden cross, and it's got a nice metal plaque as well. So this is the crew taking his mortal remains to the burial ground, and it seems that just after the ceremony, as they were all going back on board or heading towards the battleship, they could see in the distance that there was a fire coming from the Inverview house. So they all scrambled onto smaller boats, and they headed over there to try and help to put it out. I'm not going to read this out, but this is an interesting extract by Vice Admiral Humphrey Hugh Smith, and just have a read at that. The bit that I like is this, my full dress uniform never really recovered from the effects of that morning. Here are 2 war graves. The one on the left is First World War, and the one on the right is Second World War. So you've got Lieutenant Ellis and Corporal Laurie. I've highlighted this one because this is my favourite stone in the burial ground. It's very thin, it's very flat, and it's really well inscribed. And again, what's really nice is it's got a nice bit of Gaelic text here. And I can't find that many other Gaelic texts in the burial ground. Again, it's the same story. You've got lichen starting to invade, and we talked about this last time we had a presentation, and it's difficult to know what to do with that, because you can't start scrubbing it or having a go at it. I don't know the answer. Someone will be able to tell me the best way to deal with it. Again, this is just a charming shape. And again, look at the lichen. Oops, sorry. Look at the lichen cover here. It's starting to really obliterate the inscription. Just some other examples from the burial ground. The one on the left here, this is a kind of a really nice piece of monumental architecture. And the opposite of the end of the spectrum is this very primitive one here, but a very touching message. And these are other 2 very small but very delicate grave markers. I don't know how, I mean, we talked about maybe classifying the grave markers, but I really don't know how you would go about that. This is a grave marker, but it's actually a plaque on the wall, and it's right next to the Sawyer layer. Pen doesn't I? I mean, this. I'm trying to show the alignment again. Let me just pen. All the modern graves are aligned this way. This older section here, the alignment is like that. The alignment of the church is here. But I don't know if you notice this north corner here, which is probably the oldest part, the alignment really is with the wall. So you've got, they're all aligned with the wall really. And again, this area here, oops, beg your pardon, let me just do that again. This is the pen out. This is the oldest part of the burial ground here. And it's the highest point. This area here is much lower, and this is the kind of the bit that was flooded at one time. And the church sits much higher up as well, and it's probably because the remains of the old chapel, the pre-Reformation chapel, is there. It's also it's very kind of very special for me as well, because this spot here, I've actually booked this spot, so I wouldn't say that I'm looking forward to it, but it's comforting to know that my mortal remains will actually rest here, and it's quite nice because I'm surrounded by friends, neighbours, and people I've known in the past. If you want any more information about the burial ground, you can go to the Gaelic Museum website. You can find a grave. You can go to the database, and every single grave is on here. And if you find the name of a person that you want to find out about, there's a number. And you can say, for example, it's one of the L ones. You can click on here, and you've then got the whole lot there, and you can go and click on it, and you can read the message. And if it's L11, you can then go to, I can't, don't panic. You can then go to the map and find L11, which is right there. Okay. I want to show you the recording forms, and do I need to do the same thing? Can you see a recording form?
No, maybe just do the same again, Jim, if you can. Just...
Okay, right. Sorry about this, folks. Recording form. Ah, yeah. Technology. Can you see that?
That's the one, yeah, we got that.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to show, you know, every grave marker, this massive form here, recording form, with every detail you can think of is on here. So that had to be carried out for everyone. Yeah, so I think that's me actually. Let's have questions and discussion.
Sorry, yeah, I actually do have a question. Is all of the information on those record forms in the database on the website?
Pauline?
And if not, where is it?
You have to unmute yourself, Pauline.
Right, hi, can you hear? Yeah.
Yep.
At the minute, the database doesn't include each individual record sheet. I haven't dared come to work out how best to do it yet, but when the survey was done, it was all done on paper. And the list of the people that Jim showed you at the very beginning were the surveyors, and they spent months in sort of 2007, 2008, looking at every gravestone, measuring it, deciding what the material was, estimating how much moss there was on it and how much lichen there was on it. And for quite a long time, that material was in somebody's store cupboard, shall we say. And it came to me, I think it was 2017, via Margaret Denny, who had it given to her. And I have typed up all the information. So at home, I still have all the original sheets, and I have all the information ready to put on the database. But at the minute, it's not there. But obviously, we can provide it. So if there was a particular grave that you wanted to know more about, you identify which one it is and get a message through to me, and I can provide you with that. But what I'm hoping is that Karen very soon will have a bit of space on the shelves in her library or archive, so that the 3 boxes I've got on top of a cupboard can come her way. Bruce would quite like to get rid of it. But the idea is that it will be deposited in the museum, and hopefully, Jim, we can find some way. There's 230 sheets, 230 recordings. So it is a pretty substantial piece of work. About 165 of those have got inscriptions on them. So it's a huge amount of data. You know, at the minute, they're all separate records. So I think we need to work out how best we can possibly put it on the database, but certainly make it available for research.
Good. What about, can anyone help me with this business about orientation and alignment of graves? No. Anne?
Well, I would say it's pretty typical of what that you have there. Certainly, any burial grounds I've been recording, the orientation is the same. I think, is it something to do with this quote from the Bible? I'm not quite sure what it is, that they're supposed to be facing a certain way so that when Christ arises and gathers in his flock, they're facing the right way.
Yeah, they tend to be facing generally kind of eastish, southeast. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What about, sorry.
Head in the west and foot in the east, I think.
Yeah.
Facing the rising sun and facing Jerusalem, so that when you rouse, you would be facing Jerusalem.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, also, I think pragmatically, now a lot of graves are just aligned with the physical outline.
I think all the modern ones are just, it's just the way it is being like this. Yeah.
Karen, I was just, Scott Stephen here. Just Jim, a fantastic talk. Thank you so much. Really, really, really interesting. I mean, just looking at your opening where you talk about the contour and drainage and the rest of it, I hate to say it, but I think Karen's probably right. I mean, a lot of it's surely practical. The grave would lie downslope. I mean, it'd be very difficult to do anything else. So my temptation would be to overlay the contours of that and see if they lined up with the fall line, basically. It would seem to me intuitive that's how you do it, if you weren't going for a particular, geographic orientation.
There's also a possibility that soil was taken from that lower section and put up into the higher, to allow for more burials. And what about this business about the lichen and how do you deal with that? I mean, do you?
Not allowed to remove it, because if you're recording, you can very carefully scrape off moss. You must not use anything metal at all. You can take off moss gently, but lichen must not be removed because it's already gone into the fabric of the stone. And if you try and remove it, you will damage the stone. So you really must not attempt to remove lichen. I mean, all you can do is your best. If you can't get it all, well, you can't get it all.
Yeah.
Could you spray it with something so that you don't physically remove it? You just kill it?
Yes, but it's already gone into the stone. So if you kill it, you know, and the bit that's gone into the stone dies, it's still going to damage the stone. I mean, I'm just going on what I've been told.
I think there's perhaps
never ever
to it as well. So sorry to interrupt, Dan, but I think you're quite right. But there's another dimension which is not killing lichen, because just from the point of view of the ecosystem, I know that people who work with textiles now, natural dyes, it is not good practice to use lichen, because it just grows so slowly and it takes it so long to renew itself.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, could I ask again about the layout? You showed us the overhead photo and the contours, but there's a car park on the north side and there are houses, which are obviously very recent. Have you looked at any, has anyone looked at any of the oldest maps, you know, the OS maps, about what that mound actually looked like a long time ago? Because it seems to me it's only part of a mound and it's obviously been lost, but the bit to the north has disappeared. So I just wonder if there was a natural knoll there, which was where you circled the ancient site.
Yeah, I think that area has been, there's quite a lot of stone clearance, so that area has obviously been used for cultivation. But I think you're right. I mean, I noticed there's a kind of huge broad wall that comes from the southeast and goes right up to the boundary of the burial ground. And yeah, I don't think we've done any work on that, but it would be interesting. I mean, I would love to have said that the circular nature of the burial ground was because it was initially prehistoric, but it wasn't. I think that somebody suggested that it was maybe Osgood Mackenzie was involved with the building it, and he maybe just liked the idea that it was circular. So, but yeah, so that's something I'm interested in, the kind of the landscape and you know, maps and things. So yeah, I will endeavour to probe further into that. Yeah.
Could the circle be druidic?
Well, I mean, I think it could be it could have been a special place. I wouldn't definitely say it was Druid, but there's no doubt about it. That location has probably been used and reused for many years, and perhaps that's why there was a Pictish presence there. Maybe there was something special. That's as much as I can say, really. Yeah.
Jim, have you done any work on the any research on the actual chapel? You said there was an earlier chapel there. Is there any evidence of a dedication to an early Celtic saint?
No, I mean, let's face it. I mean, you know, a few of the mad monks like Marua they were kind of wandering about. I wouldn't be surprised if he passed through that area. But no, I'm not. I have to admit, I'm not very good at delving into books and things. Pauline's a person who does that sort of thing.
There's certainly several instances. I mean, you've got, I know they're in the east, but you've got Rosemarkie, yeah, and now you've got Logie Wester, where they think there was an earlier chapel and the Pictish stone stood upright outside the chapel and were either knocked down when the chapel was destroyed or the Reformation.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Kathy Dagg did try to find out a bit, but she didn't get anywhere in her research. We need to get a digital, if we can, a digital final version of her report. We've only got a draft, which was sort of incomplete, but she did, you know, give some suggestions of links to the St. Melarua, but she didn't get very far, I don't think. There's nothing recorded in any way, or legend even, I don't think.
Yeah.
Jim, there's a question here from Susan Kirkness. She's asking whether the Pictish stone might be better covered over with glass.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Susan. I mean, I spoke to John Wood, who was John Wood was the archaeologist at the time, who he actually was involved in deciding what to do with the Pictish stone. And one possibility was removing it and putting it into a museum, possibly a local museum. And he kind of felt that maybe he should have done more, and he feels a bit bad that it's got to that stage. He suggested maybe it should have been covered by a plastic or glass structure. And I think it's good that it remains in the burial ground. But it's certainly, as you can see from these photographs, quite a few people I've spoken to, visitors who come to the area, they go into the burial ground and they're totally underwhelmed by what they see, because but they don't realize the significance. It's a truly significant thing. It's just a shame we can't actually, maybe interpretation is the best thing. I don't know. Anyone get any questions?
The idea of taking it out just to examine the backside and then putting it back afterwards, maybe just to know what's on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? And also, where is the top half? Is it still lying about the burial ground?
Probably.
But we can't go poking around, unfortunately.
Why not?
Why not?
The burial ground.
I know, but can you not get permission from somewhere?
I think it's very difficult to start messing about in burial grounds, really.
It's also a scheduled monument, as Jim pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
And Peter Herbert has actually kindly put the link to the scheduled listing on the chat tool if anyone would like to have a look at it. But you're really very limited in what you can do.
There's non-invasive possibilities like a ground radar or something like that, but that's very expensive.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I'm sure there are many other interesting things that can come out of that burial ground. And it's frustrating, but yeah.
I had another thought about the round shape. Question might be: are there other burial grounds that are round instead of rectangular or whatever?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, lots of round burial grounds. The one that I try to help to look after at Old Kilmadock, also a scheduled monument, is not round, but it is well, oblong at best, oval. There are many others though, and it's usually a sign that they are very ancient burial grounds indeed. Indeed, monastic sites.
Mm.
I'd love to think that that's the case with Poolewe, but I think it changed its shape. I think it was initially almost kind of like a half circle. What do you think, Peter?
Can I just point out here, Nevis has left a message to say that the burial ground is circular on the Campbell Smith map in 1844. Mm-hmm. So it can't have been Osgood that changed it, because he was only born a couple of years before that.
Well, that's interesting, because the research that is on paper states that it was about 1850 that it was enclosed. So perhaps that's interesting there, is because that predates. So yeah.
Jim, Peter here. Interesting that we also have a Pictish influenced stone, at least I should say, at Old Kilmadock. I know that's in the Central Belt and not really related to your own, but it's also an indication of how far the Picts really did spread, or at least their influence and culture.
Yes, and I'm surprised there's no other evidence of Pictish settlement. I mean, there are no names, towns or villages or settlements. And was it a temporary? But then, there was 4 or 5 different monuments there, so it wasn't just a kind of a casual pass through by the Picts. They must have been here for a while.
Fealty, respect, subservience, even. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Blake is asking whether there are plans for any further surveys of local graveyards, such as the old burial ground in Gairloch.
Pauline?
Not me.
No, I think that's another step. I mean, it's an interesting burial ground. So, I mean,
There's a wart stone there too.
Sorry.
There's a wart stone in Gairloch as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. There aren't that many that I know of in Scotland. Quite a few in Ireland, but it's funny again that we have them in both the burial grounds locally, but they're not that common in Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy to to produce another map plan for the burial ground in Gairloch.
We just need.
It is a huge undertaking, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It started when Cathy Dagg was taken on by the Westerloch Community Council, and they got some grant funding for her to do her initial research. And then for the next 3-4 years, quite a number of people were involved in the surveying. Jim and I did the booklet. And then, for about 10 years, really, it sort of was dormant. And then we picked it up again to make sure it was recorded permanently. But we did actually have a sort of a heritage group, the Lockheed Heritage Group sort of was set up as a result of a meeting to try to work to make more of the burial ground research. And so it came from the community council to a group of local enthusiasts. And there was a training involved. I don't know if you're involved, Dan, but Scotland's Rural Past did some training on surveying. Yeah. And there was a whole group of people used to turn up on a morning, have a little session on how to do it, and then traipse off down the burial ground to spend several hours. So it's not something you can just do ad hoc. It needs to be quite structured.
Yeah,
I mean, Gairloch's not my home or anything, but if there were people who wanted to do it under the auspices of, it'd be interesting to see if anything came out of it. But it did require funding up front.
I should point out as well that a gentleman whose name now escapes me has surveyed all of the local graveyards in the parish, including the very small ones like Mellon Charles, for the pre-1855 inscriptions only, though, I think. So those are the deaths that occurred before statutory recording of deaths. And we have that information in the museum. We've got quite a large file here that has all of those inscriptions. But that was done more from the point of view of genealogy, of recording dates of death, whereas obviously what Jim and Pauline have done has been more of an archaeological focus to the investigation as well. Yeah.
Having said that, I have actually responded to quite a few queries. I've met people down there in the burial ground who've been looking to see if their ancestors were buried there, and been able to find the stone and so on. I mean, one of them was an Australian come over to visit. So occasionally it has had a genealogical link. The bit that really interested me was more the social history side. I mean, people might know I'm quite interested in the Osgood Mackenzie side, but one of his gardeners, his head gardener, for example, is buried there. Several of his staff are buried there, and Osgood Mackenzie actually did these very significant monuments to them, I think, just to show that he had the money and he was a good lad. So that there is quite a lot of social history there. And one of the things Jim might have touched on but didn't was how many different occupations are recorded on some of the stones. And then you can also have a look at things like the young children, the infants, the number of infant burials. So from sociological and way of life of people at the time, certainly from the second half of the 19th century onwards, because there are very few inscriptions from before then, it does actually give quite a lot of context to some of the other history of the area.
Yeah.
Jim.
Sorry, could I just, I will come to your question in a moment, but just a comment here from Susan Barkham. She's reminding us that Govan Old Churchyard in Glasgow is obviously famously circular, and they have the very striking Viking hogback gravestones in the old parish church there. And one of the things I think that Jim, you and I had discussed was whether the burial ground in Londubh could actually have been a Viking ting site.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. I mean, this is a possibility. Ting being THING, and it's a meeting place with a kind of Norse meeting place. There's one in Dingwall, for example. I think is it right in the centre of Dingwall, and there is
why Dingwall is called Dingwall.
Dingwall, yeah. So that's a possibility. I mean, I find it absolutely fascinating because we've got so many strands here that could link up.
Yeah. Sorry, who was it had a question there?
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Jim, that when I did history many years ago, there was a bit of interesting information I picked up that old burial sites were generally round, or certainly didn't have corners, because there was superstition in the past, serious superstition, that if there were no corners, there was nowhere for the devil to hide.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So I think you'll find that's probably one of the main reasons why a lot of ancient burial sites are either round or semicircular, with no corners anyway.
Yeah. Having said that, I don't think there are many other circular burial grounds in northwest Scotland. I mean, I think even just locally. Sorry?
I think isn't ILU burial ground, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, I mean, ILU is a special case. It is circular, and it's got a wall. It's got a structure around about it.
So I've got,
sorry, something else I was going to jump in with was the idea of Poolewe or Loch Ewe, that head of the loch there, being such a jumping off point for the Western Isles as well, in terms of thinking about people moving about by boat, that in terms of transport infrastructure, it was maybe a really key location.
Yeah, and that fits with Gairloch as well, and that could explain the stones, the Pictish stones.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, sorry, Karen.
I'm just going to do one. Well, there's two final questions here. I'll read them at the same time. I'd encourage everyone just to have a look at the chat because people have made some really interesting comments in there. But first of all, Sarah's asking whether there's a plot for the sinners at Londubh. And Liz would like to know, is there a separate plot of our burial ground for infants? Pauline?
I don't know the answer to that.
Pauline's shaking her head. Knowledge.
Yeah, definitely nothing separate for infants. They're scattered through. What was the other one? Sinners.
Sinners.
That's where
Not
I'm.
obviously.
That's the bottom left-hand corner where I am.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, on that cheerful note, I think reaching the end of our hour together this evening. So I'm sure you'd all like to show your appreciation to Jim for a really interesting and enlightening talk about a fascinating site.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.